Welcome back to the Herb Rally Podcast. I'm your host, Mason Hutchison. This episode is yet another edition of the Herbalist Hour, and this time I'm joined by my good friends, Katja Swift and Ryn Midura. Katja and Ryn are the owners and lead instructors at CommonWealth Holistic Herbalism. They also have a podcast called the Holistic Herbalism Podcast. So if you're not already subscribed, pretty please push pause and go subscribe in your podcast player of choice, probably the one you're listening to this on right now. So I really had a blast chatting with these two. They have so much knowledge, so expect to learn a lot in this one. We chat about how they met, how being a husband and wife team gives them a unique perspective on the plants, schisandra, lemon balm, St. John's wort, herb and drug interactions, and a whole lot more. And yeah, that schisandra segment is pretty long, so if you're fond of schisandra, you're going to learn a lot about that herb in this episode. Also, just want to say a huge thanks to Katja and Ryn. If you didn't know, they did the very first episode of the Herb Rally podcast way back in the day, probably about 6 years ago now. So they were episode 1 of the original Herb Rally podcast. So shout out to them for that. If you'd like to learn more about them and their work, you'd go to CommonWealthHerbs.com. Also, before we get into the show, I want to tell you about the Herbs Herbal School 25th anniversary sale. So that's 25 years of Heart of Herbs being an online herb school. They're one of the OG herb schools. And for the next couple of weeks, they're hosting a 25th anniversary sale, and that's 45% off courses. But to get that 45% off, you got to use coupon code HERBRALLY at checkout, all one word, HERBRALLY at checkout to get 45% off any Heart of Herbs online herbal certification course. And actually, I just interviewed Demetria Clark, who's the lead instructor and founder of Heart of Herbs Herb School. And as of now, you could watch that on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/herbrally. So you can learn more about Demetria Clark. And stay tuned for that episode. Should be out here on the podcast feed here in just a couple of days. We'll make that a few days. But so shout out and thank you to Demetria Clark and Heart of Herbs Herb School for supporting the Herb Rally podcast. One more time, go to heartofherbs.com to save 45% off any of their courses with coupon code HERBRALLY at checkout. Also, before we get into the show, I want to say a huge thank you and shout out to our presenting sponsor, and that is Oshala Farm, of course. So if you'd like to purchase domestically U.S.-grown organic herbs, look no further than Oshala Farm at oshalafarm.com. So I've known Elise and Jeff Higley for years and years now, and they are the founders and owners of Oshala Farm. I visited their farm many times, and I could just say that their herb quality is extremely high. You will notice the difference when you purchase Oshala Farm herbs. They also have tea blends and other herbal products such as body care products, etc. But definitely, if you're in the market for some organically grown, U.S. grown medicinal herbs, definitely check out Oshala Farm. And thank you so much to Oshala Farm for sponsoring the Herbalist Hour. And last but not least, I'd like to thank our Herb Rally Schoolhouse members for your support. Thank you so much for your membership. Your support really means the world to Amanda and I. So really appreciate it. If you'd like to learn more about the Herb Rally Schoolhouse, simply head to herbrally.com/schoolhouse and use coupon code podcast to get your first 30 days for free. That's going to do it for my rambling today. Hope you enjoy this episode with Katja Swift and Ryn Midura from CommonWealth Holistic Herbalism. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today I'm honored to have on Katja Swift and Ryn Midura. Welcome to the show, you two.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you two?
Really good. Nice.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Pretty excited it's fall.
Oh, I know. Yeah, this is definitely, it's probably cliche, but everyone says it's their favorite season. It's my favorite season too. I love the fall.
It's really the best.
It really is. First, I want to publicly honor and thank you two. I'm not sure if you remember this, but 6 years ago, you two recorded the very first Herb Rally podcast. Do you remember doing that?
I remember. That was fun.
Yeah. That was
so many since then. Wow.
Totally, yeah. We're up to like 700 episodes, and y'all have at least 100 episodes, I'd imagine, right? How many are you working on?
200 and
You know what? Hang on. Yeah, it's been a minute. We're up to 221 so far.
Awesome. Well, and to be fair, I say 700 episodes, but some of those are like 60 seconds, so that those don't really count. Y'all's are information packed, dense. You come out with I want to say weekly episodes. So, dear listener, there probably is a lot of overlap here, but if you're not already subscribed, it's called the Holistic Herbalism Podcast, right?
Yeah, that's us.
Awesome. Go subscribe to the Holistic Herbalism Podcast if you dig Herb Rally and the Herbalist Hour and whatnot. So, well, why don't we kick things off? Ryn, I heard you're the person that tells this story usually. I've always wanted to know, and I'm sure the audience wants to know, how did Katja and Ryn meet?
Sure. Well, what I usually would say is like through a social scene first, right? So we had an overlapping set of friends, but the thing was that like I came into Boston and I got into the scene and I met some folks, but she had been around and then gone.
I had just left like 2 weeks before he got to Boston. I was leaving Boston to move to Vermont to farm.
Yeah. So then I was there for, like 5 or 7 or 8 years or something. I thought I knew everybody. But then one day, like everybody was like, Katja's coming back. Katja's coming back. The person that everybody loves and I've never heard of. And then I met her and I was like, well, oh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I get it now, yeah. So we started hanging out and she'd already been an herbalist for like 12 years at that point. And I was at her place and I was like, hey, what's with all these weird herb like jars in her closet full of plants and stuff?
Like many herbalists who have small apartments, I converted the coat closet into an herb closet because you can just throw your coats on the couch.
Right.
Your herbs need a special spot.
Yeah.
So I don't know, you probably were trying to hang your coat or something. And you were like, what's with all these jars?
Yeah, but she enchanted me and then the herbs did too.
I get it. So y'all are going on, I want to say 9 years married now, something like that. I read on your about page, we're one of the few wife and husband herbalist teams in the country, and we think that gives us a unique perspective on the plants. I was just kind of curious, that kind of drew my attention. How so?
Yeah, well, for one thing, and this is really helpful in the way that we teach together so often, is that our bodies are quite different from each other. And so,
if you can tell from the video, for just to start with, we're very different sizes. I'm 6 feet tall, and Ryn is not 6 feet tall.
Sure.
I'm somewhere between 5'2" and 5'4", but it depends on the day. I don't really know.
And there's about 100 pounds between us too.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very noticeably very different, but also energetically, we are drastically different. I am cold and damp. He is every definition of dry, like literally in the dictionary. Next to dry, there's a picture of the Sahara Desert and a picture of Ryn.
Yeah.
Is his humor dry as well?
Yeah, some of the time it can be. Yeah, so that's really helpful in that we both can take the same herb and have really different responses to it, and so we feel it in our own bodies, and we often end up talking about it to each other. But also, that's really helpful as a teaching example. Like over and over again, we can say, "All right, when I drink Uva Ursi tea, I feel like I'm turning into a mummy, like before your eyes." And she'll just, I'll have like 2 sips, and I'll be like, "I'm done for the day," and she'll drink a quart of it.
Oh, I love it.
Just feel great.
Like I literally have to ration Uva Ursi because it's not like an everyday tea. You shouldn't really drink it every day. But I love it so much. Mm-hmm. And I really would drink it every day if it wasn't so stimulating on the kidneys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So that and then also just kind of different life experiences. You've spent a lot more time in Russia, Germany than I ever will, I think.
I lived overseas a lot, but also, I farmed for years and I have lived a lot more in nature than Ryn was able to do in his early years, making up for it now. But yeah. So with just a lot of different backgrounds to bring. I also I grew up, my mom was a nurse and then later a medical transcriptionist. So I came into herbalism with a medical family background. I didn't study medicine in school, but I came with a medical family background. And Ryn came with a philosophy background, which it turns out is really helpful as an herbalist.
Yeah.
How so, would you say?
I find that sometimes when I'm trying to explain something to a person and come up with an image or a metaphor, something like that, that it can be helpful to think about, I don't know, classic philosophy thought experiments, like the mind in a jar problem or things like that, and use those as a way to present a concept and express that. Also in like pedagogy, in like how do we structure the information we want to give to people.
Yeah.
You've done a lot like prior to your herbalism career, you've had more direct teaching experience. I got a little bit of that sort of just before I became an herbalist. And that was in the context of teaching martial arts. And then I met Katja and started to learn herbalism, and she taught me all trained up, and then we began teaching classes. But yeah, when you want to put together information for people in a way that they're going to be able to like receive and understand and have a plan of ideas to unfold so that each thing builds on the last and all of this, that I feel like philosophy training has been really helpful there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just listening to your podcast, you guys have a really great back and forth banter, and I know that's why a lot of your fans really like it. And yeah, you guys fill in each other's gaps where you may lack the knowledge of the other person. So that's really neat. Well, why don't we talk a little bit about plants? Also on your podcast series, I want to say you used to call it A to Z, but maybe not. Now you call it like what's on your apothecary shelves. But I was wondering, could we talk about something from your apothecary shelf, and perhaps even as we chatted about pre-show, maybe schisandra?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So we did a little profile of schisandra not too long ago on our podcast feed, but it is one that I've been thinking about a lot recently.
To back up just for a second, we decided, I don't know, I think it was like over a year ago.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
We were like, oh, what should we talk about today? And we kind of just didn't have a brilliant idea. And then we were like, we should just do a quick materia medica of everything that we keep on our shelves. And the stuff that we need every day. And we thought that would take like 2 months. I don't know what we thought it would take. We definitely did not think it would take like however many year and a half or 2 years this has been. Yeah. But it turns out there's a lot of herbs on our shelves.
When we say on the shelf, it's like these are the herbs. If you're on the audio format, right? So behind us there are rows of shelves that go up to the ceiling from countertop height, and they're full of jars, and the jars are full of herbs. And this is not all of the herbs in our house. These are the ones that we want to be able to get to at a moment's notice. So there's the cabinets and stuff that are stuffed with them, and there's bins everywhere. And like most herbalists, you kind of accumulate. But these are the ones that we turn to frequently enough that we want to just be able to grab them. And it turns out there were quite a few. So.
Yeah. Anyway, so that series is still ongoing, but yeah.
Yeah. So, schisandra is one that we've been talking about, we've been thinking about a lot in the past several months for a lot of reasons. It's an herb that we think of, honestly, very frequently for modern people. Your listeners may be familiar with schisandra as an adaptogen. They might be familiar with schisandra as an herb that can improve blood sugar regulation. Those are kind of like the sort of herbal side and the sort of like the interest of the supplement world and like your naturopath friends in herbalism side of view on schisandra these days. Yeah.
My favorite part about schisandra is kind of in the middle, which is that it really helps a lot with sugar cravings. And so it's like in the middle of those two views. Obviously, you can see the parallel with the blood sugar regulation, but the connection to the adaptogen may be a little more difficult. But I really think that what's going on there is that when people are under a lot of stress and like struggling to manage the stress and the endocrine load that stress can produce in the body, one thing that pretty universally happens is people crave sugar. Even if you are a salty kind of person, what you probably crave then is like pretzels and chips, because that's still sugar. It's just salty sugar. By the time it metabolizes in your body, it just metabolizes to sugar.
Simple carbs, yeah.
Yeah, simple carbs. And so that craving, there's nothing wrong with that craving. You're not like an undisciplined person or, whatever. Because then the next thing that happens is that we're having stress, we're craving the sugar, we're eating the brownies, and we're like, I'm so bad.
Right.
Like, you're not bad. Your body is craving those simple carbs because it is the fastest way to create energy. And if you are stressed out, your body is interpreting that as, oh, I need a bunch of energy because I guess I'm going to have to like pack everything up and run.
There's a lot going on right now.
Right, right.
Got to be ready.
And so we are not necessarily going to pack everything up and run in the modern stress environment. We are instead going to sit there and reply to the boss's email or whatever it is that we do in this modern stress environment. But those cravings are coming from like those earlier times, like in human evolution, human development, when that was the response to stress. And so that like that's just the body trying to help itself, trying to say, okay, this is what I need. I'm going now.
Right.
And so that correlation to a decrease in sugar cravings is that as the body is helping to normalize endocrine function and sort of like repair some of the pressure that has been on the endocrine system, the need to crave sugar reduces because you're like, oh, I'm doing better. I don't actually need the brownies so much.
Yeah.
It is like it's not magic. It is definitely tied into that adaptogen function.
Yeah. So it's something that that you can feel with schisandra when you work with it. And one way that we often have people to explore that is to get the berries like this, just dried, and just eat 10 of them first thing in the morning every day for 100 days. Very math structured 10 for 100,
Very
that kind of thing. Yeah. But that works really reliably. People try that. But what we also want to emphasize whenever we talk about this kind of thing, and this is something we bring up a lot in our free course for absolute beginners. We call that 4 Keys to Holistic Herbalism. We emphasize there that like you can just give people herbs, or you can just give people the names of herbs, which is even less and is also a thing people often equate, right? If I tell you the name of a plant, have I given you much information? Have I told you about like how to take it, how long to take it, what's an effective dose, who's a good manufacturer of a product even?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe not so much, but people often kind of just leave it at that and feel like, especially on like Facebook comments or whatever, take schisandra. Okay, how? Like when? There's a lot more to it than that. And so, when we're thinking like from that span from people who are brand new to people who want to be like, I'm a clinical herbalist, I'm going to give people advice. We want to think about those things that make the difference, like bring you up to that level. And you're like, okay, I can talk to you about schisandra, different ways you can take it, eat the fresh berries, get this capsule from a good manufacturer, things like that.
Like there's a lot between the name of the plant that might be helpful for you and even will that plant really be helpful for you? Or was that helpful for somebody else with a totally different body? Yeah. And you need that kind of action, but more suited to your body. And so where do we find that analog herb? But okay, let's assume it was helpful for you. How do we get from that herb to your body and the improvement that you're trying to see? And all of that is in the holistic part
of holistic
herbalism.
Yeah,
right.
And then the other thing too is like, and we do try to raise that from the very beginning in our 4 Keys course or like any other like day one class that we teach. It's going to be like, yeah, have schisandra, but also let's talk a little bit about what kind of carbs you get and how often and when in the day. And could we start your day off with something that's more protein focused? And that would change the way you get cravings in the day and when you're like hungry for sugar, right? So that plus schisandra is more powerful than schisandra alone. And if we also like take a 10-minute walk after every meal and sleep 30 minutes more in your night, those might not be enormous changes, but when we start stacking them together, we can see really incredible effects. And so, we're always focusing on that. And that's both a thing for beginners to understand from the start. When I work with herbs, I'm also working with the rest of my life. But it's also a really important thing for people who want to be clinicians to understand as part of the job, to not just give even the complex recommendation of the herb. Yes, this type of schisandra, this dose, this long, right? But, and also here's some lifestyle stuff that's going to intensify that effect or smooth the transition for you, right?
I think it's also really important to recognize that as a clinician or as a community herbalist, just helping somebody at your kitchen table, it isn't that we recommend these other strategies along with the schisandra just because, this would be good for you, or these are, quote, healthy. Like really teaching that, okay, listen, this problem here with the sugar cravings or the blood sugar regulation or whatever it is that we're trying to address with schisandra has an endocrine component. And schisandra is going to help bring that into balance and reduce the pressure on the endocrine system. But there are other things that we can do to reduce that pressure as well. And so when we shift to like less carb, more protein in the morning, this is how that strategy is going to impact your hormonal cascade and assist with the work that the schisandra is trying to do. And if you take a short walk, 10 minutes twice a day, that will impact your hormonal cascade in this specific way, which will assist the work that schisandra is trying to do.
Right.
And so really being able to, first off, understand how all of this weaves together, but then as you advance, to teach that to the people that you're trying to help at whatever level you're trying to help them.
Right.
Yes.
To do that differently for each of the different people who shows up for you,
Mhm.
right? Because some people want, 6 pages of citations, and other people want a story of your own experience,
Mhm.
or, like an archetypal elemental sort of image of what this herb is doing in their body and how that fits in with the archetypal elemental aspects of daily lifestyle changes, because those are there too, right?
Mhm.
Those aren't just restricted to our plants and our flower essences and crystals and stuff like that, right? They're in everything we do. Yeah.
Just a quick break from the show to thank our presenting sponsor, Oshala Farm. Oshala Farm is a beautiful and vibrant certified organic herb farm based in Southern Oregon, where they grow and sell over 80 different plant species. The founders, Elise and Jeff Higley, have been longtime friends, so I highly trust their growing methods and ethics. You'll love the potency and vibrancy of all the herbs they have to offer. To learn more and purchase their herbs and other organic goods, head to oshalafarm.com. So thanks once again to Oshala Farm for sponsoring the Herbalist Hour. Now back to the show. Enjoy. You see, dear listener, this is how much information they could pack in 5 minutes right there. So again, go and subscribe to the Holistic Herbalism podcast. Thanks for all that. Just a couple comments. Right when, Ryn, I want to say you said chewing on the raw berry, or not the raw, but like the dried berry. By the way, I've always said schisandra. You're in the schisandra camp, though. Do I need to change?
I am, yeah. I think you go back and forth, though.
Okay.
I think I do.
Yeah.
A lot of times students ask us, what is the proper Latin pronunciation of the words and whatever. And as a person who used to teach high school Latin, I can tell you that, I feel like I have some authority to say, just don't say calendula. And, literally all
blasphemy.
Don't say calendula. Honestly, even if somebody said calendula, that's just an indication that you've never heard someone say it before. You've only read it and studied it. And if you've read it and studied it, that is amazing and fantastic and honorable. And if you do say calendula, fine. That's not a problem.
I still say pecans. I mean,
Okay.
They're pecans.
It's just like that,
Also, some of these names are really fun. I always say Silybum marianum because why wouldn't you? Or there is a native species of plantain, which is Plantago rugelii. I think most people say rugelii, but why would you say that when you could say rugelii and imagine this plant with googly eyes on it? Have a little fun with the Latin.
I appreciate that. And they're just going to change the Latin names in a few years anyways. So,
Right.
But I did want to say, right when you said chewing on the berry, my mouth just started salivating, which means I'm already prepping to consume it, which I have none around me right now. But you were talking about the different methodologies of taking schisandra, and I've always really enjoyed it as a tea. And I do notice the effects. Man, I'll have some schisandra, and it really does have this energizing effect. My constitution loves it. Do you have any take on, say, tea versus chewing on the berries versus tincture? Because when I would consume schisandra tincture, I would almost notice nothing. Maybe I wasn't consuming enough, but
yeah, that could be it. That happens sometimes. I do want to, before I answer that question,
Sure.
I just want to say that your ability to hear schisandra and conjure the flavor and the physical response, on imagining that's something that we want everybody to cultivate, and you can only do that through direct experience. So when we're teaching, we're always we can talk to you all day and that's fun, but you got to get the actual herbs and put them in your mouth and on your skin and whatever, because that's where you're really going to learn that stuff,
Right. Herbalism is not a multiple choice test. If all you do is learn all the words, but you don't have the physical experience, then you're just the outline of an herbalist. You got to fill in that outline with the actual flavors, because there is an aspect of herbalism that is kind of like cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't kind of taste the things that you're trying to put together and formulate for someone, well, first off, your formula is probably going to taste really bad.
Yeah, I feel like
Also, those flavors directly reflect the energetics. And so as you're thinking through the formula you want to build and you're kind of tasting them in your mind, the same way that you taste an apple when you think about the fruit salad that you're going to make, or I don't know, whatever. Or like you're grilling a steak and you're like, oh yeah, this needs some garlic, because you can imagine that flavor and you know that's what you want for dinner that night. In that same way, as you're formulating and you're feeling those flavors, it's like, oh wait, no, the energetics of that flavor is wrong for this person. Like I'm thinking about the Uva Ursi flavor, and then I'm like, oh wait, no, this is for Ryn. Let's get something different, you know?
at least smooth it over.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Schisandra, I when I think of different ways to take it, one that jumps out to me is infused wine. And we've had a habit for a lot of years to have a kind of a cycle of making some infused wines. And one of my favorites is, I call it red over white, because you start with a white wine, usually kind of a sweet one is what I go, not like Riesling sweet, but you know, a little in that direction. But then you put in, I usually go with like elderberry and some goji berry, some rose hips, some hibiscus calyx, and then some schisandra berry as well. And you let them macerate in there for a while, and it looks like red wine, right?
Like it really like red wine.
It gets all those anthocyanins and the pigments and the colors in there, and it gets really dark. And then you drink it, and it's like a refined version of drinking a Starburst candy.
I like that.
It's like sour, fruity, you know, kind of complex, but yeah, it's really, really good. And Schisandra is great that way, or we've infused it straight into like bold red wines.
Yeah, I prefer it in a red.
Mm-hmm.
I have found tincture to be really effective, but I do take fairly high doses of tincture, just sort of categorically.
Yeah, your dose is more like a swig than a swig.
Yeah, I don't bother with a dropper. I take a little mouthful.
Mm-hmm.
But I have found that to be super effective, and to have like a direct impact on sugar cravings. And I feel like, you know, with so many different herbs, there's like a sort of keystone effect that you feel really overtly, that is like an indication of other effects that maybe you don't feel so directly. They're happening and they're important, but you don't have like a really good way to express that those things have happened. And I feel like the sugar craving thing is that keystone effect for Schisandra. It's really hard to say, oh, look, my endocrine glands feel more harmonized. I don't know. What does that feel like? What if it feels like is that you're sleeping a little better, and that you're maybe not getting as cranky in the day, or like whatever? But sometimes it's hard to notice those things.
Yeah. Maybe kind of cool down some.
Right. But like, oh, hey, I didn't actually eat any cake today. Like, you notice that, you know?
Sure.
Yeah. So I do find that with the tincture, but I don't think it would be effective at like a half a dropper full. I think maybe like 3 droppers full.
Yeah. Depends on your body size and metabolic rate, lots of factors. But yeah, and that one, you know, it's an adaptogen, right? So we can take these in larger doses. I think sometimes what happens is people get hit by the flavor punch, and they're like, yeah, I've had, this is enough, 10 drops, I'm good. Yeah, right. And, you know, if you're working with Schisandra because you wanted to get, you know, some digestive stimulation, you don't need to have enormous doses. Right?
True. One little berry will do that work for you. If, however, you are working with Schisandra because you wanted a really strong glucose regulation effect, like assisted effect there, but the flavor was a little too much for you, you could blend it with Tulsi, which also has a really good blood glucose level, like recovery rate improvement. That was an awkward sentence, but like it helps you get back to baseline in terms of blood glucose regulation. And the two of those together are pretty good.
Yeah, I also like to take Schisandra, hawthorn, and goji, and then decoct those. And the sweetness and the much gentler sourness of the hawthorn, they kind of smooth over the spiky taste elements from the Schisandra when they've cooked down for a while. Yeah, that's a good preparation.
You almost grow to love the flavor though. Over the years, I've really
It's
start to
true.
enjoy it, you know. And like you
Yeah.
said, you only need a little bit, but I didn't even need to have any schisandra. All I had to do was think about it, and I already got the digestive juices flowing.
Yeah.
That's a great tip about the infused wines. I haven't thought about infusing wines in a long time, but I remember a couple years ago I would infuse Pinot Grigio with lemon balm. So just for the
Yeah.
listener, I highly recommend trying that out. I'm gonna have to give your what did you call it? Red on white. That's a good call.
Yeah, River White.
Yeah.
Like the Susie and the Banshee song.
Okay, I don't know that one, but
Yeah.
Katja, you also mentioned taking an herb, maybe I think you said schisandra by tincture, and you might not notice the physiological effects going on in your body. I just wanted to bring up, I've been taking St. John's wort tincture as a recommendation to me for I want to say several months now, and people are like, "Oh, how does that make you feel?" And I have to be honest with them. I'm like, I don't actually notice anything, but I have to presume something's going on there. I mean, I know that there's lots of studies out there with St. John's wort and whatnot, but maybe I am feeling a little brighter these days, less gloomy days. But I don't know if you have anything to add on to that. But
You know, I mean, it's hard to say, yes, I feel that the liver enzyme concentration has increased by approximately 2.5%, you know, like whatever. Like, it's really hard to feel that, but you might feel that like you're processing things better. If you're a person who drinks caffeine, you may find that it clears better. Or if you're a person who drinks alcohol, you may find that you have a little less hangover. It might be subtle at first. And so you might have to sort of ask yourself, like, do I feel that? And then like give yourself a minute to be like, you know what, actually, that has been happening and I didn't quite notice. Or you may find that like overall transit time in the digestive system improves, or in other words, you're less constipated.
right.
Right.
And you might not attribute that directly to St. John's wort, especially if you're thinking about St. John's wort in neurological terms.
Yeah.
The digestive system and the emotional nervous system are so tightly twined. And if you think about, like, to not be too delicate about it, if you just think about constipation, physically, it's quite uncomfortable. Emotionally, it's a thing. And those two things are connected. And so, like, if you think about St. John's wort's emotional effects directly in terms of the digestive effects, and you're like, you know, I am a little less constipated and also a little less emotionally constipated, you know?
Yeah. Those would be the kinds of effects we would be highlighting for somebody who was going to work with St. John's wort for that. Would be like, all right, this is what we're going to look out for over a period of time that might be, like you said, a few months or 6 months or something like that.
Yeah.
And it can often be hard to kind of think back to where you got started from, you know?
Yeah.
And then so it's like, all right, well, what are we going to track and how are we going to do that? And both as like a thing for students or people who are studying herbalism or working with herbs to do for themselves when you're learning a new herb or when you're experimenting with a new herb for yourself. But then, yeah, also when you're going to be a clinician and you're going to recommend the herb to someone else, you want to help them to get some of those goalposts or those way markers, right? If they come in and they do an intake session with you, that's a bunch of data, right? That's a baseline, or that's like a snapshot of what's going on for that person right now. And then if we meet again in a month or 3 months or 2 weeks or whatever the right time is, we can see where they've gotten to. But what's really great is if someone is going to like keep some kind of a journal or some kind of like a health checklist, like how am I doing today on these 6 markers? You know, this is what's been bugging me. This is what I'm trying to change. I start this herbal protocol. I start this new set of lifestyle habits. We check in on those once a day, you know, something like that. That can be effective. Other people like a more, you know, narrative journal. Some people like symptom scores. People like different things, but something like that is really, really important because we want to know if our herbs are working, right? We want to know if the thing that we're working with is doing what we hoped for. And again, it's so easy to forget where you were yesterday, a week ago, let alone months ago.
True. Also, like, humans get stuck in a rut. Like, that is just the default for any given human is a rut because that's efficient. Like the human body is just like an efficiency seeking entity at all times. And so if you have not been well in whatever way, you get migraines, you get whatever, you kind of adjust to that as being your normal. And that settles in. And when something changes, great, it changes, but you very quickly adjust to that being your normal. And so you kind of try to check in with yourself and you're like, I don't know, I feel normal. And it's like pushing past that to like, no, I need to really like evaluate what that means. And this is why I personally have trouble with the number scores. A lot of people find them helpful, and there's so many ways to track things that it's good to try different ways and see what works best for you. But I really find a little bit of like quantitative and qualitative narrative to be helpful. So if somebody says like, I get migraines 5 times a week, and those migraines are enough to make me stay home, not go and do what I wanted to do. And then a month later, you see that person again and you say, hey, how are you doing? And they say, oh, about the same. And they believe that because that is what it's not because they're dumb or because they're not intuitive or they're not connected to their body or whatever. They believe it because that's what the human brain does. Everything, like what you're doing right now, it is normal. And so then you say, okay, how often did you have a migraine last week? Oh, I had 1. Great. The last time I saw you, it was 5 a week, and now we're down to 4. This is fantastic. And that's usually when it clicks like, oh my goodness, you're right. I did have 5 a week before. Right. And so whatever method allows you for yourself as you are experimenting or as you're working with others to track that kind of information, help other people track that kind of information. And it's okay to do it on your phone. It's absolutely okay. They make apps that help you really quickly assess, did I or did I not have a headache today or whatever.
That's cool.
Yeah. One that we really like is called Dailyo. It's just a little graphical. You just click the picture, but
yeah, you give it the list of things that you want to just track. Did this happen today or not? Like had a headache, didn't have a headache. You could put your number scale in there. You could do different things. Got to bed on time, stayed up late, whatever, and then you can collect some data. So, but again, the point is just like finding some way to do that. That can make a big difference. And sometimes people will be uncertain about if the herbs are working or if the thing that they're buying is worth the expense or whatever else.
Or the trouble.
So if we can help somebody to sort that through, then we can serve them in many ways.
Yeah.
Like not all the work we do for clients is choosing herbs that are going to match their dosha or anything like that.
Actually, and we were just talking with one of our mentorship groups. We have as students progress, from their first classes all the way through towards clinical herbalism. When they're ready to start seeing their own clients, we have them in weekly mentorship so that we're going over every client with them and helping them as they like learn to do this work on their own and get comfortable with it. So anyway, last week with our mentorship group, we were talking specifically about that in the, like when you're working with somebody clinically or as friends or whatever, your first suggestion is not the final answer. Like your first suggestion is the first round of experimentation. And then you have to track the data. There's not like a guarantee that first formula, that first whatever is going to be the perfect thing that works, no matter how good of an herbalist you are.
Yeah.
Because everything is about like, okay, we're going to match up these ideas with this body. We think this is going to be the outcome. Now we're going to do the experiment and find out. And so you always have to be following up and checking that data and making adjustments, because even if it was perfect, there's still going to be adjustments. Oh, okay, great. Well, it was perfect for a month, but now your body's different. So we might need a different formula now. Or
we kind of hope for that, don't we?
Right. Or maybe it wasn't the perfect thing. There's nothing wrong with that. That does not mean you're a bad herbalist. It just means we have data now and we'll make some adjustments and get closer to the target each time.
So much good stuff there. I want to say, as far as the St. John's wort stuff goes, versus I had a linden infusion the other day, and I noticed the physiological effect immediately. Like it it's
Yeah.
just so crazy to feel like immediately brightened and like my mood lifted. And, I always joke that I'm going to get these knuckle rocker tattoos that say herbs work on them, even though it doesn't quite fit. But like, it's moments like those where I'm like, shit, herbs really do work. And I'm sitting here, taking St. John's wort tincture every single day for months on end without actually feeling it. But, based on how you chatted about that, Katja, looking back, I'm like, I have had, say, less certain spells over the past few months and whatnot. And like you said, it's like, what is your normal? You have to like compare it to when you first started the program then versus now. But
Totally.
yeah.
And things are always an experiment for many reasons. Some of them are centered in that individual that we're trying to make suggestions for. Some of them are just centered in the fact that humans don't know everything, right? So we've talked about schisandra before, and like one of the things, if we go to PubMed, right, and we search about schisandra right now today, we're going to see a lot of stuff around potential herb-drug interactions because of some influences this can have on some liver enzymes. There's some indications it's kind of similar to grapefruit, where it might generally slow down drug metabolism, and that can be a problem just as much as accelerating drug metabolism in the way that St. John's wort can do. Particularly because now you might have that drug lingering in your system for longer than you expect. Guess what that means? You're probably going to get more side effects, right? So it's something to be aware of. And grapefruit, this is like totally extremely well proven, and not just in petri dishes, but in living people and all of that. Schisandra is an interesting case though, because that concept is out there in the medical literature. And so if you're going to be a clinical herbalist, you should be conversant with that. But there is still some question about how much of those studies or that data does translate to the way people are working with schisandra as herbalists or as people drinking schisandra kombucha. Or,
that sounds kind of good.
It is good. Yeah.
It is. There's a kombucha maker in central Massachusetts that makes a schisandra kombucha.
Awesome.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Plus, schisandra is an extremely popular herb in South Korea. I have a number of students in South Korea because we have a number of students in South Korea because we teach for the pharmacy schools. It's one of the things we do. And so we teach pharmacists who are like in their 6th year of training, and they come hang out with us for 6 weeks, and we try to teach them herbalism, kind of like this is what your profession used to look like. And
that's cool.
Again, but we get a lot of students who are from South Korea, and they're very familiar with schisandra under the name omija. So I've been interested to look into to see what like South Korean scientists have to say about herb drug interactions with schisandra, because I feel like that could be a little more based in reality, right?
Yeah, where it's so much more commonly a part of their like diet soda, but whatever.
Sure.
Yeah. Right. But these kind of things are necessary whenever we look at information from science about herbs, right? It's like there's the study itself, there's like the report that they wrote about it, there's the abstract of that report, there's the press release that the university puts out based on the abstract, there's the news service like Eureka Alert or whatever that does a short summary of that, right? We're several levels away from the original thing. And so it's very easy for that stuff to get misinterpreted or overinterpreted or misapplied or whatever. And so again, herb drug interactions is just part of your life as a clinical herbalist.
Especially today.
There's very few people who aren't going to be on any medications at all. You'd be very limited in what you could do if that was a barrier to your practice. But you also you don't want to dismiss it. And I get a little anxious when I see people who are kind of like writing off these concerns like as a blanket statement, right?
Even though it's unfortunate because sometimes a scientific study comes out and like all this shocking whatever, and it wasn't well done, and it turns out that information is in fact not relevant.
Like it might be relevant if you take an extract of a single compound from an herb and you get a whole syringe full of it and inject it into your stomach. That might cause cancer for you, but eating that herb is completely safe.
Totally
right?
safe.
This is like calamus and sassafras.
I was going to say that.
Yeah,
exactly. Right. So
it's unfortunate that happens, because then when there are also studies that also have like what schisandra has drug interactions, and like, is this crying wolf or is this real? Like you just have to check it every time without a bias.
Yeah.
It's part of the thing that we talk a lot about in our herb drug interaction course is, well, first off, how to do this research, but also just how to approach the research not with your emotions.
Yeah. And even like, what are the questions you're actually trying to answer?
Yeah.
You know?
And listen, if like that scientific work around calamus, for example, where that study that talks about, or the around sassafras also, where they're like, oh, well, this could be a carcinogen or whatever. That's not useless science. It is not relevant to herbalism.
Right.
But most of the scientific studies in the United States are being done from the pharmaceutical industry, and they are looking for things that they can extract from herbs, highly concentrate, and then turn into a pill or an injection. And okay, if they're going to do that, they do need to know that if you do that, oops, this one causes cancer, we can't use that. That is actually super important information, but it just isn't relevant to the practice of traditional herbalism.
Right.
If you go into these studies with like a bias that is like, oh, science is stupid, they don't know anything, like whatever, then you'll miss the ones that come up that actually do have relevance to traditional herbalism.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So in the case of a calamus, off the top of your head, do you know if that's what they were trying to do? They were trying to create a drug out of calamus root?
I'm not sure where this came from. It could have been like that, or it could have been that there were, some exceptional circumstances that led them to probe into it. In a lot of cases, it's not even based on anything that occurred in the real world. It's just based on, the structure of this molecule is similar to the structure of this other molecule that we're more familiar with. Let's see if it behaves in similar ways or has a similar safety profile.
Gotcha.
That's done pretty regularly, yeah.
But usually, I mean, if you think about why studies get funded, they get funded because somebody is hoping for a return on the investment. How would you get a return on the investment? To try to productize a thing.
Yeah.
So usually, they're looking for novel phytochemicals that they can pharmaceuticalize, which again is not necessarily evil. Like, I think it's not awesome when they're like cutting down 5,000-year-old yew trees. Okay, I think that's a little on the evil side.
Yeah.
But it's not bad or wrong. It just isn't traditional herbalism. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to hear. Sorry, go ahead, Ryn.
Just to say that, like, all of these things have a place in the healthcare mosaic, right?
Sure.
Like, sometimes you need people who can knock you out and cut you open and sew you back up. And,
right? I mean, that's not awesome,
put
but
in a new organ and do all kinds of other like fantastical stuff. Completely unimaginable to grandparents of ours who are still alive. All kinds of things, right? It's amazing, but there's also some situations where a very different tool or approach is needed or is more effective. And so we're always looking to not say like herbs are superior to a drug. We're like, well, when is it appropriate? Who is it appropriate for?
Right.
Like that matters way more to me than like which one is like better in some abstract universal sense.
Yeah. I don't like to refer to herbs as tools.
Yeah.
But you need the tool, the right tool for the job. And occasionally that is, we were just talking earlier about our lovely dog, Elsie, who had to have a tooth removed yesterday. And it got cracked and it got damaged and it was getting rotted and it needed to come out. And
although we could, if we absolutely had to, we could come up with some herbs to calm her down and make her sleep and hope it lasted long enough for us to figure out how to get it out ourselves. We would never want to do that.
Just go with the tool for the job and whatever. Anyway.
That's better for everyone.
Yeah.
I used to volunteer at the Occupy Medical bus back in Eugene, Oregon, and they had nurses and doctors and herbalists and Reiki people, and it was so beautiful to watch everyone kind of coexist and respect each other because they all had different tools on their tool belt. So I was hoping you could kind of chat a little bit more about the herb drug interaction course. Is this like a one-off course, or do you have to be like a full-time student at the CommonWealth Holistic Herbalism School, or can you tell us more about the course in general?
Yeah, absolutely. This course you can take as a one-off. It is available, and it's also part of our clinical herbalist program, which is a series of several courses.
Okay.
So even if you did all your study at some other school or whatever, but you didn't get really good in-depth herb drug interaction training, then yes, you can take this course. It includes not just all the herb drug interactions that you need to learn, but like all of the methodology of how to keep up with the science yourself, so that, I mean, we do update our courses every 3 years. And when there's something important, we put it in sooner. And for all of our courses, students get all the updates for free. All of our courses are lifetime access. And anytime we add anything, you just automatically get it.
Right.
So, okay, there are always going to be updates, but it's also important that you, like, we don't want to just teach you.
This course is not a list, right?
Yeah.
It's not like if someone is taking azithromycin, that would interact with these 6 herbs. Like that's
Memorize this list and regurgitate it at, no.
Boring.
yeah, no. And also, but not helpful, right?
Yeah.
Like people
Right.
need to learn some principles about what kinds of interactions can occur and how to predict when something like that is likely. But then also what you're talking about is like how to look at the existing evidence we've got from every source that we've got it from and pick out the ones that are relevant to the work that you're going to do with this individual in this case, right?
Right. And sort of starting from a really conservative, like with regard to risk standpoint of, okay, here's how to be the safest possible. And like maybe you are in a situation where you don't have a lot of information about the person. And so you just want to be very risk adverse, all the way down to really nitty gritty. All right, St. John's wort can't be taken if a person's taking pharmaceuticals, but actually, a lot of pharmaceuticals don't interact with St. John's wort. So let's get nitty gritty. Like, would it interact with this one or that one?
How do you check?
What
know?
kind of a situation would be a caution situation? What kind of a situation wouldn't? And if you have all the information about a client and enough time to do that work, you might choose to do that work. Whereas if you don't have a lot of time, you might be like, oh, no, I'm going with a different plant right now. And so we try to go through that whole process so that you're able to practice in any kind of environment and feel confident about it.
And there is another layer to this, which has kind of come into a new focus for us in the past year, which is that it's not just about you and the client, because it's, again, also going to be about their other healthcare providers. And so sometimes we'll look at a case and we'll be like, yes, all of the evidence that we've got that's relevant to the work that we're actually doing and not to a petri dish does tell us that this combination of this herb, this preparation, whatever, and that drug should actually be safe. However, their doctor is not going to take the time to look into it with that kind of nuance or be able to read the kind of information sources that we're drawing this conclusion from. And so if they just see that herb and that drug together, they might freak out. And so we could prevent that for this client if we pick a different herb that has the actions and effects and qualities we want, but doesn't have this drug interaction concern. So sometimes that consideration is more important than, no, I'm certain that these enzymes don't affect the, right? Yeah,
we don't really serve the client very well if we set them up for an adversarial situation with their other medical practitioners or their other practitioners who are practicing conventional medicine. And so, like, already it can be complicated to work together as part of a care team. It's great when a person's conventional medical professionals want to do that collaboration work, but some of them are not interested in that. And so if you have that kind of situation and you're trying to serve the client best, then you're really thinking ahead about, like, what am I setting up for this person in terms of just aggravation that they're going to have to deal with. And since there are so many plants, and if you are working from the perspective of energetics and actions, it's really not that complicated to swap in a different plant.
Yeah, or 3 different herbs, and they together combined represent the aspects of that one herb that you're trying to sub in for. Yeah.
So knowing a bit about your work, you guys offer like I want to say like a weekly or a monthly Q&A session. Is this herb drug interaction? Well, it's every week?
Twice a week. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Twice a week. So people that enroll in the herb drug interaction course, are they also available to partake?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. So there's twice a week live Q&A. They're optional. We record all of them.
Yeah.
So if you're not available, that's fine. But twice a week for the general student body, twice a month for the international student body that's in their time zone. So that, I mean, they're welcome to stay up to weird times and attend general ones, but we do them in international time zones as well, because we have a large international student presence as well. And then the clinical level courses also have an additional set of Q&A for more advanced questions that maybe aren't appropriate for the, like, they're a little too nitty gritty for the general Q&A session.
Right. Yeah.
We just feel like, you know, if you're going to be learning at home, on one hand, that it's so convenient. You can do it whenever it fits into your day. You can do it at your own pace, but it can be very isolating. And so we want to have these live sessions available that people can just plug into and realize, like, oh no, I am here with the community. Like, everybody else is asking their questions too. People are getting to know each other in the chat simultaneously as it's all going on.
Yeah.
We also have a student community, like a private one that's not on Facebook or social media. And it has a mobile app so that all the students interact with each other there. I mean, we also are there, but
chime in, you know.
but they are forming study groups with each other and working on certain courses together and all this stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, we've been very. I mean, we held off on doing online education for several years, kind of waiting for some technology to mature to a point where you wouldn't just be sort of alone with your laptop and some video or whatever. But to get more direct interaction in several different sensory channels and access points. So
we ended up finally launching about a year and a half before COVID started.
Yeah.
Good timing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because it was really established by the time that, like, we were pretty practiced in it by the time that everybody was like, oops, COVID.
Right.
But we started thinking about moving our live work online much earlier than that. And just, we weren't happy with the technology. But we really find that now what's out there allows us to do, like, all of the sort of lecture, all of the just knowledge transfer stuff people can do on their own time. We do everything on video and audio, and then we have printable stuff also, so that whichever way people learn best, if you just want to go for a walk and learn that way with it in your ears, totally fine.
Yeah. We've got most of our videos closed captions. We're going to get all of them.
Yeah, every week, or actually sometimes every day, more of them are captioned, but almost the entire family program and almost the entire community herbalist program are already captioned. So anyway, it just, we try to make the, like, knowledge transfer part as flexible as possible, but then we also try to make it so that they actually know each other. Like, students actually can talk to real other students. And
it's very similar to what we always say about, you got to taste your herbs, right? You got to talk to other people who are also tasting herbs, because they're going to have a different experience. And again, I can tell you that once and you can nod and be like, oh yes, people are different. But then actually, like, talking to a lot of folks who are into herbs and working with them often, having weird ideas that you never conceived of, but then you get convinced and you try it, and now it's your favorite thing too. Like, this is part of herb school, right? So yeah, we wanted to make that real.
Very good. Well, it sounds like you update it every 3 years, at least the herb drug interaction course.
all of our courses. We
all
do
of courses.
3-year cycle. So they're like rolling, like, okay, this year it's this one, and then the next. So everybody is updated every 3 years.
That's really cool. And I just had a couple more questions before we get out of here. You seem like the perfect people to ask this. What does your study habits look like for you two? Like, are you constantly learning via clients? Because if you keep updating your courses and everything, which is amazing for the students, especially the ones that purchase it, now they have lifetime access. What does a study habit look like for you two on, let's say, a weekly or monthly basis? Are you setting aside time to take new courses, read new books, etc.? I'm just kind of curious.
For the two of us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
right now, and really for like the last 6 months, I've been really obsessing on the impacts of COVID on the population, both in terms of just residual effects of COVID, even in a person who doesn't have long COVID symptoms, as well as long COVID specifically, and what that means for how we practice and what kind of changes we need to make in our practice. So I think I know for sure that I spend an hour every day reading studies for like the last 6 months on long COVID stuff and the impacts of COVID, even if you don't have long COVID symptoms. So like the impacts on the CD4 immune cells and whatever. A new one that I was reading this morning is that in children, COVID hides in the tonsils. Well, okay, as herbalists, that is really important information, because we have access to the tonsils, like lots of tea, and there are herbs that directly can assist in dealing with something that's hanging out there and just waiting for a chance to come back again.
Yeah.
So, so that has been something that, we're both taking clients all the time, and
yeah, and like you mentioned, we definitely learn from clients because it's a problem that we haven't encountered before, or it's a new medication that we haven't had somebody on that we're working with previously.
Or it's the exact same problem we had last Tuesday, but a totally different person, so it needs completely different strategies.
Right. Yeah, that's real. And then from students, because students will ask questions that you've just never considered.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's really extremely valuable as a teacher, because you're like, okay, I'm going to consider that now. I'm going to dive in. We're going to learn this together. This is fun,
Yeah.
So I'd say that's an ongoing stream of new information and experiments and so on to play with. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Well, I guess as we wrap up here, what's next for CommonWealth Herbs? What are y'all, any exciting upcoming projects or anything?
Yeah, well, the clinical course material is getting its refresh, and so we've been filming some material we're feeling really excited about for a course that we're calling Clinical Skills.
Yeah.
This is primarily about, okay, you're going to see clients. What does that mean? Like, how do you prepare yourself? What do you need to do in advance? What does your paperwork look like? Okay, but now let's actually sit down with someone. How do you talk to a human? How do you get them to talk back to you?
Yeah, everything from the legal part of running your clinic all the way through to, like, how do you get somebody to tell you about their past trauma in a way that does not trigger them, but also gives you the information that you need to, decide on how to collaborate with that person.
How do you put together a plan with someone? How do you go from, these are my 36 ideas that are all extremely awesome, to these are the 2 that you have the time, the energy, the money, and the focus to implement now,
that will actually move the needle for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That course is, so previously we only ever were teaching that course live by like scheduled webinars. And now we are shifting it to the pre-recorded format, like our other courses, and then it has its own Q&A stuff. So it will have its re-release probably at the end of this month, and people will be able to grab that. But we're really excited about how the videos are coming out and the exercises.
Yeah. We have a bunch of great new ideas for our students, and we're really excited to see how they react to them.
Yeah. But awesome. Also so excited because when there's a course that you only teach live, it really limits the access to that course.
Yeah.
And especially because closed captioning for herbalists,
is that a class?
You can't automate it. Like, we have a human who does all of our closed captioning because the AI does a terrible job at herbal closed captioning.
Yeah. Plant names of diagnoses or medications or whatever. The robots, they're not quite there yet.
Yeah. So,
Gotcha.
There's so many, like, even just like time in people's schedules, all that stuff. When it has to be live at a certain time, it limits who can attend. And I'm really excited that this is going to open it up for people. And the only time they have to fit in their schedule is just the live interaction time where they get to ask us questions. We don't have to use up their schedule time for the knowledge transfer. They can fit that in wherever it fits.
Yeah. Yep. So that's what we're up to right now.
Love it. Well, I was going to say we're about 60 minutes in and I haven't said the website yet. So CommonWealthHerbs.com, if I got that correct. And of course, dear listener, I'll leave links to all the different things we talked about in the podcast show notes. So thanks you two so much for joining me. Wow, you really brought a lot of information. We talked about schisandra probably for 20, 30 minutes maybe. So there's so much useful information and takeaways. And I probably got around about like maybe a quarter of my questions in. So
Sorry.
no, that I love it. I absolutely love it. I know the audience is going to love this episode as well. So any closing thoughts as we wrap up here?
Let's do it again sometime.
That'd be great.
Questions and we'll see what you can do. Yeah.
I'm going to hold you to that, Ryn.
If you haven't tried schisandra tea or the berry straight,
or the wine,
try it. It's really fun. Yeah, it is an experience. It's kind of like herbal pop rocks. It is a flavor explosion in your mouth, but try it because it's fun.
I guess I'll ask the question, do you have any recommended places where people should buy schisandra berries, or if you want to go there? If you want to endorse anybody?
We usually recommend Mountain Rose Herbs.
Sure.
Especially if you are new to herbalism and maybe you don't know a lot of local places, or you feel like you're not certain about your skill in assessing quality. Mountain Rose Herbs is like gonna have good quality, and they have a lot of sustainability focus. And yeah, we like that a lot. And so it's a great place, like as you advance in your training and learning and you start to learn farms here and nearby, that's fantastic. But Mountain Rose Herbs is always there, especially for the stuff that maybe your local farms don't grow.
Yeah, reliable.
And man, I was going to say, we have a new presenting sponsor here at the Herbalist Hour, the Oshala Farm in Southern Oregon.
Oh, we love them. They're fantastic.
Do they have some? That would be cool.
Yeah, they're awesome. The only thing is, they don't sell schisandra, and I can attest to the sustainability of Mountain Rose Herbs as I worked there for 11 years. And also, they have great quality control, so you know that they're testing their herbs all the time, and you know it's going to be high quality stuff. So, good stuff, y'all. Well, thank you once again for joining us on the Herbalist Hour.
Yeah, happy to be here. See you later.
Awesome. Bye. And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Herb Rally podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us here at Herb Rally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from Herb Rally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving texts, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.